Hey, George, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jason. How are you, man?
Yeah, man, I'm excited to have you on. So tell us who you are, what you do.
Cool. Yeah, George Arabian. I am the CEO and founder of NVISION. We are a full service digital marketing agency up here in Toronto, Canada.
Now, how'd you start an agency? Accidental, planned, what?
You know what? It was very accidental in the way I started. I originally was I used to build computers when I was like 12, 13 years old. So I was a big tech nerd, I guess. So I used to build computers up until the age of like 17, 18. I got somebody came up to me in the early stages internet, said, "Hey, I need you to build me an internet." What are you talking about? An internet? He's like, "Yeah, man, I've got this hockey shop down in Toronto. We need an internet." And dude, I don't like, what's it? Like, you mean the web thing? Like the sites? He's like, "Yeah, this is like early 90s. He's like, "Yeah, build me one of those." I'm like, "Cool." We're like, "We don't know what all this." Starting, looking around, started buying HTML for dummies, JavaScript for dummies books, and put in about 500 hours into my first web project for his little hockey shop. Paid me $400.
400 bucks. I got your beat. Mine was 500.
Okay, so yeah, it paid me $400. I was like, "This is the best $400 I ever earned, man," because I learned so much about the world of internet coding and whatnot. And so that led to like, yeah, I know a guy who needs one of these things. I'm like, "Cool, give me." So it just kind of,
What'd you charge for that one?
that one I charged probably $800. I doubled my rates, and I thought I was being like,
So you went from 75 cents an hour to $1.50 an hour?
yeah. Well, I did it faster. I did it much faster.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started to learn to kind of repeat some of the same things and leverage some of those assets and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, then one thing led to another, and here I am, I guess now 30 years after that. But I started the agency about 21 years, but I was building web for about 30 years ago.
It's really cool how things have changed and not changed, right? Like if you think about, you know, everyone needs a website and the basics are still there, but obviously now you can have AI create a website like that. It's really cool how technology has changed, over the years. Um, what's what was it like? Maybe kind of you've been doing it for 21 years. Let's talk about kind of what was it like at year, like when you hit the decade mark? Where was the agency? Where were you? Where was your mindset? And how is that different from today?
I think part of the one of the things I really love about the space that we're in is that we're kind of like, we're mad scientists. We're always experimenting. We set a path, we have a hypothesis, and then we explore and we experiment. So a decade in it is no different than it is today for me, where I'm still kind of experimenting. And, it's some mornings I wake up and I'm like, is this, am I still unclear of what the future looks like in this space? Because it adapts and evolves, and AI obviously is changing the landscape. But 10 years in, we were probably at about 5 to 8 employees. I can't remember exactly. We're a small little firm doing, projects in the range of, 5 to 20 grand. So no big 6-figure projects or multi-million dollar projects or anything like that. It was really like, we're building custom websites. And then we started sprinkling in marketing. We're like, okay, now you have this entity out in the world that you got to attract. You got to attract audiences to come to this entity to ultimately convert them, right? So we started toying with integration of SEO and paid advertising and social, and that led to email and CRM and now content marketing initiatives. And here we are, and we're still exploring, like, what are we for? And I know your big thing is niching, you're really finding your niche. And, that's been way heavy on me to really like try to define that. And it's so challenging when you kind of want to do a lot,
Mm. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, what's the challenging part about, or what do you think you were fearful of, or maybe still fearful of with niching down?
Getting bored. I think I've like part of, I've had interviews with my staff. One of them in particular, the first thing she asked me when I interviewed her 8 or 9 years ago was, what's your niche? And I'm like, oh, niche. Like, I don't want a niche. Like, you want me to build websites for like the real estate industry and just focus on that? I mean, there's players out there who do that great. I just don't think I'm cut that way. I think I would get very bored of the same old rinse and repeat. I love continual challenge. So my niching has like, through being part of Agency Mastery, like my niching has become more really centering our products and services around creating human connection. And I'm not sure how to necessarily tell that narrative yet, but that's where our agency is going, our human to human.
Well, I like that too, right? And I always tell people there's so many different ways to niche down. It's not all about picking, like your example, a real estate market and just doing that, right? And it's also, you can build multiple niches. You just have to have people in charge of those.
Right.
Right. And, when we first started off and really kind of niching down, it was more for around the technology first. And then as we got a lot of momentum, then we started adding industries or different things out there. But it gives you a huge leg up, but it does take a while, to figure it out. I was chatting with, Jack, one of your fellow members, and he went to me 8 years ago. He niched down to the landscaper market, and he goes, "It was the best thing I've ever done, but it was the scariest thing I've ever done in the business." Because he was the same thing. I felt like I'd get bored, but now he's like a local celebrity in the landscaper market, right? And George, I think that's the best kind of celebrity, right? You can go to the events and be the celebrity there, but then you can go out to go get a cup of coffee, go to a movie, go to a restaurant. No one ever bothers you. Like, I would hate to be The Rock or someone really famous. Or like we were talking about Hulk Hogan, like how George met Hulk Hogan in Tampa when he went down to Florida. We were talking about it in the pre-show. Like, imagine being him. Like, you can't go anywhere without, his people going, "Hey, get away, brother."
Yeah.
Is that a good impression?
It's good. Right on. Spot
on. What has it been like, transforming from the agency owner to the agency CEO?
Yeah. You know what? The challenges kind of like compound, right? As the larger your agency gets, the more complex the challenges become. And it's really difficult. It was for me. I know others, peers of mine, who struggle with the same sorts of things. And it's, reassuring when I hear their stories. But for me, there's such an emotional connection because I started this thing 21 years ago and I was intimately involved, and I know how to let go and delegate. I mean, I'm not certainly come a long way, but one of the things that's always challenging is how do you ensure that you're still caring for the people here, but making the right choices for the agency as well. And, you got to set emotion aside. And that's something that's, for me, based on who I am and my upbringing, very challenging, a very challenging thing to do. Because we genuinely, I think most agency owners, the ones I talk to in the group, the ones I talk to who I've known for years, we genuinely do care. Most agency owners do care about the people they work with. So I had to develop a second persona, which is
like an alter ego, like Hulk Hogan versus Terry, right?
Got it. Yeah, it was interesting because for me, a lot of the decisions I was making were based solely on emotion and solely on how do I ensure the well-being of this individual that's involved in this particular scenario, good, bad, or indifferent. It's not always, doom and gloom. It's just in this particular scenario, emotion plays a large part of our decision-making process. So I said, okay, one morning I woke up, I'm like, okay, I said to my wife, hey, honey, I'm going to work. My first day on the job. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I just got hired by this agency who wants me to come run the company. I'm going into with literally that mindset. And I had to do it that way because I knew no other way. And so I get to work and I didn't tell any of the staff. I'm not introducing myself. I'm just kind of there as I'm observing everything around me and I'm just making notes. I'm sitting in on meetings that I wouldn't necessarily sit in on. I'm just inviting myself. Check out what goes on in these meetings. I just want to feel it, like kind of inefficiencies there maybe, or maybe there's great efficiency. So, this took about a quarter of observation, and then it really allowed me to identify gaps and issues without putting me bullshitting first. So that was my solution to trying to get me as a guy who wears his heart on his sleeve put to the side and to be like, dude, the agency is an entity as well that needs to be catered and taken care of. You cannot treat it as it's just the thing. It is an entity, just like a human being is an entity.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I like that you said, I'm starting my new job today. Now, have you gone through the process of being a little bit depressed? Like, have you gone into a meeting and be like, George, I don't need you. I'm good. And then go another one. I'm good.
Like today?
Yeah.
Yeah. No word of a lie. I literally had, this happened to me today. I'm not even joking. This morning, I sat in on a meeting and two of my senior staff are like, you don't need to be part of these. Like, stop being part of these. And I'm like, so I'm not needed? Like, the feeling of like not being needed. Set in.
Which is our worst fear. I mean, remember like going back to, grade school and people were picking, like everyone picking, and you never wanted to be the one picked last or not picked, right, for the team.
But, putting on, so again, in that particular scenario, when I put on the new CEO persona, when I'm that guy, and it's so absurd conceptually, maybe for people listening, but when I'm that guy, I get to decide if I'm sitting in on that meeting or not. Because if I find it important to be part of a meeting, because I'm trying to course correct something that I don't see going the way I want, then I'll make that decision versus the other guy who's the emotional heart on his sleeve guy who's like, okay, not wanted. Let me step aside and let them do their thing and hope for the best, and I think the one thing that I failed to realize, I think at one point along the way is there's a huge dependency on the leadership team and the CEO to set the path, to provide a clear message and direction and make sure that that's articulated all the way down to the most junior staff, right? And I think when you're not part of certain meetings and you rely on a certain leadership team to make sure that that's happening, if it's not, then I think that accountability is on you.
Yeah. Well, it all starts with the leadership, right? And the realization of going, like I would say in the mastermind, when people were like, well, how do I do this? I'm like, you're asking the wrong question. It should be who? Like, who do you need to have to do this that can figure this out? Or who do you need to become in order to give the power to your team in order to do this, right? Because there's if you think back at your 21 years of growing the agency, and bravo for 21 years, right? Like we just hit 10 years. I was excited. All right. And then the agency I sold hit 12 years. So like, I can only imagine when we hit 20 years, like how excited I'll be. But, when you're doing it, you have to kind of step back. And I like how you said, take out the emotions and be like, here is where we're going. And then I felt like there was a transition where my team wasn't working for me. I was working for them. right? Have you gone through that yet? Like where you're like, how can I support these guys and gals in order to help them get to where they need to be, both, personally and, on the business side, and take the agency to the next level where they start making the right decisions. They become the leaders. And then you can kind of step back and you get that freedom that we've always wanted.
Yeah, for sure. I think to answer your question, yes, but it was done with crayons,
Yeah.
So as you mature as a business owner, the crayons evolve to pencil crayons and pens, and then eventually formal documents. And then your ability to articulate and communicate effectively becomes better and more honed in. So I think it's an evolution, man. Like I think when I first started, it was like we've been doing this annual retreat thing for probably 16 of the last 21 years, right? So every year we get together. And the first year, I'm sure, if I would recall 60 years ago, if I was sitting there, it was a dinner. And it was like, okay, this year, here's the goal. High five, let's have dinner, let's have some drinks and celebrate. And then it would go, and it's like, why did that? A year would pass and be like, hey, we did pretty good this year, but we didn't really, did anybody write it down? What were we doing this year? What were we supposed to be tracking? And now we have tools and we have formal, documentation of what we're trying to accomplish, what our OKRs, what are our main KPIs. I think that takes a level of maturing. If you were to ask me, tell me your KPI when I'm in my early 20s.
Yeah.
Versus today.
You'd be like, what's a KPI?
It's like, I can't believe it, right? So yeah, I mean, it comes with being part of communities, learning from others, reading. I mean, I'm I read a ton of books and whatever. So you try to learn from every little place you can, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's an evolution, man.
Yeah. Other than setting the vision and communicating it to your team, what are your other roles now that you're the true CEO in your mind?
Yeah, so I used one of the techniques. I think it was part of it. I'm pretty sure it was part of a conversation within the group again. And I was so grateful that this came up. It was, what do you want to do? And what don't you want to do? Document those. I think you might have said it to us. Mm-hmm. So I drew up my circles and I put down and I shared it with the whole group. And one of the things I love to do is I love to mentor. I love to create content. I love to go after and support landing the big whales. Like the minnows and the fish are great, but I want the challenges. So there's really defining the things I love to do versus those I don't. So it's allowed me to do that, to focus on the big things that I need to do to move the agency forward. Yeah, I would say that's it. That is the new role, is having clear boundaries of, that's not a me thing. That's a you thing. You got to take care of this.
Yeah, everybody thinks, and there's so much of the wrong content out there of talking about, here's how to get the best clients. Here's how to generate, the biggest pipeline, all that kind of stuff. When you have to think about, if you're struggling with that, do you have clarity, both clarity for the business, but also clarity for your role and what your role needs to be in the agency, right? Like, I always, the exercise that you went through was really kind of happened when I went to a job interview, when I was about to close down my agency. And they asked me, what do you want to do? What don't you never want to do? And so that's what gave me clarity of going like, hit rock bottom. And I heard a great quote. I don't know who said this, but it was kind of cool. It's like, when you feel the world is like crashing in on you and all this dirt and you're buried in the ground, you're not buried, you're planted. And I thought that was the coolest thing of being like, hey, I'm planted in this ground, I can actually grow. And so when I actually started thinking of those questions, I was like, well, man, I love, like you just said, I love mentoring people. I love being the face of the organization. I love, assisting on big relationships. And then, I knew I had to be forced to understand the KPIs of the financials, or, understand the spreadsheets that, my fellow nerds that I love are sending me. Right.
Yeah.
and then you can grow. But like, do you feel like you have more freedom now that you have that clarity?
Yeah, I think it's getting there. I mean, I'm not exactly where I'd like to be just yet, but I've certainly taken strides in the right direction. And now my ability to convey this to the leadership team in a cohesive, concise manner is much better than it was before, because I'm looking at things very objectively and putting the emotion aside. Mm. I can't, if I'm speaking honestly, some days are harder than others. Some days you're just emotionally attached to something or a situation, so context matters. Mm. But yeah, I would say I'm better equipped today than I was, say, 6 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, and people think when you hit there or you hit a certain level, all your challenges go away. When the solutions that solve your challenges yesterday are going to create new problems.
Yeah.
And don't get into this business if you don't like solving problems. Like it's just constant. And there's constant ups and downs. I mean, we're all on this hamster wheel, right? And the bigger you get, the more challenges you get. And then it's like, all right, how do I figure this out? But it's all about just trying to get around that wheel a little bit quicker the second time, and then a little bit quicker the third time. And then we like recognize certain patterns in order to make better decisions. But that's the beauty about what we do, and that's why we get the freedoms, or because we're solving these big challenges, rather than just going to a 9 to 5 job.
Keeps it exciting, that's for sure.
Well, George, this has been amazing. Is there anything I did not ask you that you think would benefit the listeners listening in?
No, I think the only thing that I would say for anybody who's struggling, who is an emotional individual, and there's a lot of us out there, don't feel afraid to try to put on a new hat or create a new personality, because I think it could help you look at things slightly differently and could help you make good decisions for whatever type of organization you're working in.
Yeah, I like that. It's you almost got to kind of develop an alter ego.
A character. Creating another character.
Yeah. And it's just, I am one of my coaches a long time ago. He used to work with Kobe Bryant, and he helped develop the mentality of the Black Mamba, right? Of like, I am on the court, I will seek and destroy, I will be the best and all that. But then off the court, because you can't be that, right? You can't be cutthroat in one and then go back to your other life if you have that same persona. Like you kind of transform into that. And I really do like that you mentioned that, George, about you kind of have these two personas. I have this hat on, I'm going to do this. And it just keeps you focused. And then you're like, when you go home, you could take the hat off and you're not always thinking about the business, even though a lot of times truth be told, it's kind of hard to shut it off. But for certain times, depending on what you're doing, right? That's why I learned how to fly a plane. Like when I'm in a plane, I don't think about anything about agency mastery. I'm just trying to think, how do I not die? Right. Or I got into pickleball, like when I play pickleball, which is hilarious because I grew up playing tennis. I played in college. And I'm like, pickleball is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
But
I love it. I'm addicted to it. It's crazy. I love it. I love it. I love it. But when I'm playing, I don't think about anything else. Right. Like, so I like the different hats, and then it gives you that freedom to not have to worry, damn, am I going to make payroll today?
Might sound foolish, but it helps. It's helped me tremendously.
Yeah. Well, awesome. George, what's the agency website people can go and check you guys out?
Check us out. Go to envision.co, and we're on all the main channels, all the main social channels as well, under /envision at Envision Solutions. Plus, all over the place.
Oh, cool. Well, George, thanks so much for coming on and sharing what your new hats are that you're wearing and your story. And if you guys enjoyed this episode and you want to be around other amazing agency owners and be in a community where people can see the things that you might will see because they're not emotionally attached to them, I'd love to invite you guys to have a conversation with us. Go to agencymastery.io and see if you're right for the community, if we can help you out, point you in the right direction. And until next time, have a swank day. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want more content like this, make sure you click on the link on the screen or check out your most popular podcast platform where the full episode is there. And until next time, have a swank day. What are you doing? Go check it out. Click on the link. I'll see you soon.